Good morning or good afternoon. My name is Tarmo and my geocaching name is Metroboy. Today, once again, I'm standing here in front of the Priory Park where Southend Band, Southend Band, is performing some melodies. So let's go and give a look. So I am now. There is 5 minutes to spare and I see the band is already making their instruments to put in tune. I remember I used to be actually playing saxophone way back 25 years ago. Yeah, must be 25 years ago at least. But that was different time, different instrument. This time we don't have any saxophones here.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon over this side. Good afternoon over this side. Good afternoon at the front. Good afternoon at the back. We are here at very short notice. On Tuesday? Wednesday, we got a call saying that the band that was meant to be here, Fakener Band, couldn't come. Could we get a band together in this amount of time to come and play? And we're pleased to know we have. So thank you to all of those who are normal Southend Band players and those people who have come along to help this afternoon. So let's give them a round of applause. Okay, I can see the applause is just warming up at the moment. We'll get going as we go through the afternoon. That was a march to begin with called Blaze Away. A rousing American march written in 1901 and is a mainstay of many marching band and brass band concerts. So the first part of this concert is going to be taking us around different parts of the world. So from Priory Park, we're going to visit many different parts of the world during this afternoon. Our first stop is in Spain. I know, it's almost a Spanish weather. We almost gave it up because we thought it was going to rain today, but look what's happened. We've got a lovely day for this afternoon. I'm going to play a piece called Amparita Roca, which was written by Jamie Texidor and named after one of his piano students. A fiery rhythmic dance and a paso doble, one of the most well-known paso dobles in the world. We hope you enjoy that. And then we're going to go from Spain right the way down to Cornwall. And in 1911, an English composer, Katie Moss, after visiting Cornwall, composed something called the Floral Dance. Made very popular later on by the Brighouse and Rastrick Band in the 1970s. They had a hit with that and was played very much by Terry Wogan when he was on the radio. He then later had a hit with it and the band, and we're going to resurrect that for you this afternoon. So two pieces now, Amparita Roca, the Spanish influence, and then down to Cornwall for the Floral Dance. Right, we've been to Spain and we've been to the West Country, and now we're heading right away to the other side of the world, to New Zealand. Now, Lady Adrienne Stewart is a great patron of the arts in New Zealand, also a great friend of the Scottish Co-op Band as well. But Peter Graham, an illustrious composer for brass bands, was asked to compose a piece in remembrance of her, celebrating her love of the arts. And this beautiful piece is one that he penned, and we're going to play for you now. It's called Lady Stewart's Air. And then we're heading to Mexico. I thought they had more excitement than that. We're heading to Mexico. Oh, good. Thank you very much. Based on, I've got to say this really carefully, Jarabe Padate, which is the national dance of Mexico, a spirited and joyful celebration of Mexican culture and folklore. Expect toe-tapping rhythms, so you feel free to join with that bit, and plenty of colour in this popular favourite tune. You'll recognise it, I hope you will do, as soon as you hear it. So, Lady Stewart's Air, and then the Mexican Hat Dance.
Ja elu meil siin, laelu meil on tunduvalt parem kui neil seal. Nii et natukene põhjal.
iseenesest kuritegevus ka kurjategijad lakkavad olemas. No ja me võime seda ka ette kujundada.
We've had a lot of remembering recently over the last little while about thoughts that have gone back to those days of World War II, the ending of World War II, and the sacrifice that people made both in fighting and back at home to bring that conclusion that we needed. One of the main things that we remember at that particular point is the contribution of the Royal Air Force. And the Royal Air Force have a famous march entitled the Royal Air Force March Past, which we're going to play for you now. So feel free to enjoy that, and if anyone feels like getting into flanks and marching, then please feel free to do that also. And then we go back not to military music, but to the music inspired by Vera Lynn. A name and a sound and the songs that are synonymous with those times. And this arrangement, entitled Keep Smiling Through, is nostalgic wartime favourites music, which includes We'll Meet Again and the White Cliffs of Dover. So again, if you feel inclined to reminisce and to join in, channel your inner Dame Vera, then please do so at that point. How are we doing? Are we enjoying it so far? No, the band aren't allowed to say no. I'll try again, because if I'm honest, that was a bit lackluster. Are we enjoying it this afternoon? Yes, good, wonderful. We have two more pieces in this section, remembering that time of the Second World War. Now, if I start the words, you must remember this. A kiss is still a kiss. A sigh is just a sigh. The fundamental things apply. Wonderful. Thank you to the three of you. Got that one? As Time Goes By. Written by the American composer Herman Hupfeld. Made famous in, of course, the film Casablanca in 1942. So this ballad is brought to you this afternoon by the Southend Band. And then we go to the skies one more time, to a fictional hurricane, oh no, I beg your pardon, a fictional mosquito squadron called 633 Squadron. And so a piece that you might not know the name to, but you will certainly recognise the music. So, as time goes by, and 633 Squadron.
Nõukogude süsteemis üldse peeti kurjategijateks, me ju teame, meil olid poliitilised taga.
We're going to introduce one more set of soloists to this afternoon. Our time is almost at an end, but we have to introduce now our Repiano second and third cornet bench, who are going to bring to you a beautiful version of the John Denver song Annie's Song, written and recorded by him in 1972 and inspired supposedly by the love for his beautiful wife. So Annie's Song we will do, and then we're going to turn to one more piece in this section before we come to our final piece. I'll let you know what it is in a minute when I've found it. It's here somewhere, just bear with me. Oh, there it is. Who remembers the late great Eric and Ernie? Welcome and Wise, yep, and the music that they always ended their shows with as they had their Macs on and they danced off into the distance. Bring Me Sunshine. So Annie's Song, then Bring Me Sunshine, and then we have one more offering which needs some audience participation for the end of the afternoon. It's nearly done. We have one more piece for you. Yeah, I thought it was sadder than that, but we'll go with that. So we have one more piece for you. Oh, good. Thank you very much. Now this one needs some audience participation. It is a piece of classical music written. Let me just check so I get my information completely correct. Written for Offenbach's operetta Orpheus in the Underworld. First performed in Paris in 1858, so proper classical music, although we know this Galop and Fanal by its name that it's come to know these days, which is the can-can. So, for this afternoon, we're going to bring... Excellent, madam. Yes, you can be our star in can-canner. For this afternoon, we're going to bring this as our final piece. Please feel free to join in, whether you can or you can't. Just join in how you can do, clap, however you want to join in. And remember, for this afternoon, if you've enjoyed it, we've been the Southend Band. If you haven't, we're still Fakenham Band. We wish you a very good evening and thank you for coming. Goodbye, everybody.
And this is it. This was Southend Band, brass music I truly love. And if you like this content, what I do, I try to do some more. Please consider subscribing and leave a like, because this helps me to grow this channel. I would like to reach this year 500 subscribers mark. I don't think it's happening this year, but who knows? Thanks to you guys, everything's possible. Thank you very much.